Hi, good afternoon. It's Lorraine Ashover from Minerva here, just with my latest blog post. I just wanted to share with you an article that I was reading yesterday from the Business Finance magazine. It was by David Borowski. It was all about outsourcing. Really, it was aimed at global businesses, but I was quite interested to read it because a lot of the information that was in there and the practical points that it raised were very relevant to schools, and in particular when they are looking at outsourcing. So good examples of that would be your cleaning contracts and your catering, which are two sort of obvious areas that schools tend to look at outsourcing. So I just thought I'd bring you a couple of the points that he'd raised in the article, as I thought they'd be useful for you if you were considering looking at either outsourcing or even just a general sort of tender. Again, some of the points raised are really good for when you're pulling together a tender for a particular set of products or services that the school require. So the first thing really is to decide what sort of outcome you want from the process. So do you want something that is results orientated? Do you want something that is process orientated? So is it something about the way that the supplier actually supplies the services? Or is it the achievement of certain outcomes that you want? So, really sort of start to pull together what you want to see as the outcome of the provision of those outsourced services. It's important to determine how you evaluate success. So this helps to preserve the objectivity of what you're actually looking to do. It helps to balance between cost and quality of service, because as we all know, reducing cost is one thing, but actually maintaining a decent quality of service is something else. So you need to decide what your parameters are for that. What do you want the success to look like? Get it written down. That way there's no wriggle room for the contractors or the service provider when later on down the line they say, well, you didn't tell us that was what success looked like. There's no wriggle room, so make sure you do get it written down. I'm still amazed at the number of schools that I come across where they just don't have even the most basic contract in place covering the terms and conditions of the contract that they have with the supplier. So get it written down. Control the brief, and when I say that, make sure you communicate clearly, comprehensively, precisely the details of your requirements from the outset. Again, leaves no room for any kind of misunderstanding between you and the supplier. It's also important to ensure that you bring into that process all the members of the staff that are involved in the use of that particular service or product at the school. The reason I say that is because I've recently had a contract which was awarded to a particular supplier, and on the first day that they turned up to provide the service, it became apparent that the initial parameters of the contract were drawn up incorrectly because one of the major users of this particular service hadn't been engaged in the process. So what it meant was the contract had been awarded on a completely, incorrect basis, and we had to go back to square one. So massively important to engage all the stakeholders, all the teachers and support staff that will be utilising the product or service. Get your provider to give you their A team to actually not just provide the service once the contract has been awarded, but to actually go through that contract awarding process. We all know that large organisations particularly do have quite a big differential in the quality of staff that they actually have employed within the business. So make sure that you ask for and are provided with the best team possible to negotiate that contract on behalf of the school. Encourage innovation with the suppliers that will benefit you. So, basically ask them to become more efficient, to innovate, but also write into the contract that any benefit from that innovation goes to the school, or is at least shared between the school and the service provider. Often what happens is innovations will take place with the provision of a service. That will result in cost reductions, but more often than not, the supplier will retain those cost reductions and not pass it on to the school. So try to get drawn up into the contract that you would at least share in the benefit of that innovation, if not take all the benefit of that innovation. Also, as part of the initial process, develop meaningful service level agreements. So again, this goes a little bit back to the what does success look like. Just make sure that you've got comprehensive measures in place for the services that you're providing. I mean, bursars often say to me, well, after I've awarded this contract, how do I know that they're actually going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver? And that's the reason why we put service level agreements in there. Just simply because you can then tell very, very quickly whether they are delivering what they've said they're going to. And most importantly, if they're not delivering that, it's very easy for you to demonstrate that and actually make sure that you can cancel the contract or get out of the contract and go to another supplier or back to your existing supplier if things aren't working out. So that's one of the reasons why that's, you know, a very, very important part of the process. So only when you've done all of that groundwork should you then start to enter into the proper negotiations with your supplier, because until you've done all of that, you don't actually know what you're asking the supplier for. So make sure you've done all of that groundwork first. Establish the critical points of the deal. Make sure you know what your deal breakers are. So, you know, what would be something that you would say, right, actually, no, that's a walk away. I'm not prepared to compromise on that. And what are those areas where you are prepared to compromise, where you're prepared to sort of trade one thing for another, you know, to get the deal done. In terms of the transition when you're outsourcing, two sort of points really to raise with that. First of all, overestimate your transition costs. It is inevitable that those costs will be more than you have anticipated. It's just a fact of life, really, when it comes to outsourcing of supply. So make sure that you over egg the cost of transition. That way, you're not got any surprises. It keeps within budget if there's a budget set for the transition. Make sure that you include in there some of the soft costs as well. So things like loss of productivity. Some of your key members of staff. If you're involved in things like, the outsourcing of catering, for example, they're bound to be impacted, their workload, their productivity. So make sure you put those sort of softer costs into the mix. And finally, remember that, even after all of that process, you still have the option to say, outsourcing is not for me. I've been involved in several projects, for catering, for cleaning, where ultimately the school has decided that it's just not cost effective to outsource it, and it's actually better off remaining in-house. And so what your suppliers have to realise is that they're not just competing against other competitors, but they are also competing against the status quo. So I hope that's useful. As I say, although the article was aimed at global businesses outsourcing huge tranches of their business, I really genuinely felt that there's some really useful pointers in there for schools when you're looking to outsource. So I hope that's been helpful, and obviously do feel free to give me some feedback. Thanks very much.